Chapter 4. Does she want to rise to power? At night, Lin Shu planned to go downstairs for a glass of water and noticed the light from the study shining through the gap under the door as she passed. The light wasn't turned off. She twisted the doorknob, intending to turn off the light, but paused when she saw Ji Tingyang at the desk. She glanced at the time. It was already midnight. He was still dealing with work at this hour? A momentary flash of her own husband's face crossed Lin Shu's mind. It was not unusual for him to stay in the study all night long, whenever he worked overtime. Lin Shu always urged him not to work so hard, and he would embrace her waist and say softly, "I want you and our child to live a carefree life, and it's worth the hardship." What had she responded at that time? Lin Shu thought for a moment. Health is the capital of revolution. If you wear yourself out, what will become of me and our child? After that, she would forcibly drag him back to the bedroom to rest. This incident had just happened last week, yet it felt like 20 years had passed in the blink of an eye, and he was no longer with her. For a moment, her expression turned sad and melancholy. Lin Shu had stood at the doorway for too long. Ji Tingyang noticed the unusual presence at the door, looked up, and seeing Lin Shu, asked in puzzlement, "What's wrong?" Lin Shu came to her senses, walked in. "Are you still working?" "Yes, I still have some documents to deal with. If it's not urgent, you can handle it tomorrow. It's already very late. You should go to sleep," Lin Shu urged. "Wait, health is important." Ji Tingyang opened his mouth, about to say something, when a small hand suddenly landed on his head and patted it. "That's my boy," Lin Shu said, as if soothing a child. Ji Tingyang's body stiffened, and while he still had something to say, he silently closed his mouth, letting her hand stroke his head. Since his parents had died, few had cared for him this way, and this nostalgic feeling made him reluctant to leave. It was Lin Shu who couldn't hold on any longer. She couldn't suppress a yawn, and reminded him once more to go to bed before leaving the study. Just as she exited the study, she encountered Wen Li coming toward her. Wen Li, carrying a water glass, came up from downstairs and caught Ling Su exiting the study, a hint of surprise flashing in her eyes. Ji Tingyang's study had always been off-limits to others, and she had only entered once or twice. Unexpectedly, this new woman entered and exited the study as if it were nothing. Lin Shu looked at Wen Li's slender figure, dark circles under her eyes and a haggard look adding a fragile beauty that was pitiful yet charming. Lin Shu knew that this was mostly due to fasting and poor rest. Anyone would feel down if they were confined to a villa all day. Thinking this, she spoke out, "Don't worry, I will persuade Ji Tingyang to let you leave. After leaving, find your leading man and never see her son again. That way her son won't be in trouble, Ji family's businesses won't go bankrupt, and everything will be wonderful." "You?" Wen Li couldn't believe Lin Shu's words. Ji Tingyang loved her so much and had never heeded her requests, so why would he listen to another woman? Since meeting Lin Shu, she always told herself that she would persuade Ji Tingyang to let her go. Could she be aiming for a higher position? According to her trial report, Ji Chai-ching let her go. Wen Li sneered inwardly. "Yes, I will persuade him more during this period. Just wait a few more days," Lin Shu said, oblivious to her thoughts, trying to offer comfort. "Ooh, then good luck," Wen Li responded coldly and turned to go back to her room. Chapter 5. fear that she will never return. Lin Shu had thought of many ways to convince Ji Tingyang, but upon opening her wardrobe the next day, she was distracted by the big issue at hand. She realized she had no clothes to change into. Until the third day, Lin Shu was still wearing the set of clothes she started with after her rebirth. The clothes in the wardrobe still looked the same as they did 20 years ago, no different from a few days ago to Lin Shu, who glanced at them and then closed the wardrobe. It wasn't until now, when she wanted to change her clothes, that she discovered all the clothes in the wardrobe had faded and yellowed, leaving nothing she could wear out. She sat down on a stone bench and wiped away her eyes before looking at the wall. "Pu Yongzong, it's Ma." She took her hand and squeezed in several places. Ji Tingyang heard her scream and hurried over. Lin Zhu was holding a red dress, looking pitifully at him. "I just bought this dress less than a week ago and haven't worn it once, and now it's already old." She had planned to wear it to a dinner party in a couple of days, but now it was completely ruined. "Added the clothes inside are unwearable," she said dishearteningly. Ji Tingyang breathed a sigh of relief, thinking it was something serious. "It's just clothes. You can always buy new ones." Lin Su looked at him pitifully. Ji Tingyang quickly realized, "My bank card is in my room. I'll give it to you in a bit. You can buy whatever you want." Lin Shu, moved, said, "My son has grown up. He can earn money to spend on his mom." In the past, when she went out to pick dresses for parties, she would always be indecisive among several options. Little Ji Tingyang would say, "Why not buy them all?" Lin Shu would pretend it was difficult. "We're too poor to buy so many clothes. Mom can only choose one." The shop assistant glanced at the handbag worth hundreds of thousands in her hand and the limited edition black card, and kept silent. If that's considered being poor, then oneself surely doesn't deserve to live. But children don't understand these things, immediately feeling sorry for their mom and hugging her neck to comfort her. "Mom, when I grow up and earn money, I'll give it all to you, and you can buy as many dresses as you want." Lin Shu kissed him on the cheek, smiling. "My son is really great." In the blink of an eye, that child had grown up and even told her Damini to use his card. Lin Su's eyes welled up with tears, moved. After having breakfast, Lin Shu was eagerly waiting at the door for today's shopping trip. Ji Tingyang handed her the black card. "Shall I have the driver take you?" "Ah?" "Ah." Cho sighed again and looked around. "Sure." Lin Shu didn't insist otherwise. 20 years had passed, and she probably didn't even recognize the roads anymore. "What's the limit on this card? It wouldn't be good if I maxed it out." She took the card, glanced at it, and casually asked, "There's no limit, feel free to swipe it." "Just talk about having the aura of a powerful CEO," she teased. Ji Tingyang smiled. Lin Shu waved to him, turned around, and walked out, opening the car door. This scene was too familiar, so familiar that Ji Tingyang's heart ached painfully. It seemed like the last time he said goodbye to Lin Shu was just like this, waving, getting in the car, leaving, an accident, after which his relatives reluctantly told him that his parents had gone to heaven and would never return. With a heart full of bitterness, almost reflexively, he grabbed Lin Shu's arm. "What's wrong?" Lin Shu asked, puzzled. Ji Tingyang's mouth opened slightly, hesitant to speak. He didn't dare say it was because he was afraid she would leave and never return, just like before, but then Damon had tried to kill her if this time his hands weren't. Lin Su blinked, guessing what he might be thinking, and suggested, "Why don't you come with me? So many years have passed, and I don't understand anything. What if someone deceives me?" Chapter 6. Love without material substance is like loose sand. In the high-accent clothing store, when Lin Shu came out of the fitting room wearing the 10th outfit and spun around in front of Ji Tingyang to ask for his opinion, he was already beginning to regret his impulsive decision. The interval had been too long, and he had forgotten just how enthusiastic Lin Shu was when shopping for clothes. Every time they went out to look at the latest season's offerings, she would try on clothes for half a day before buying everything. When he was a child, he could sit and wait while playing with toys, but now it seemed his patience was running thin. Doing what she always did, getting words on her lip before slipping away again. Seeing Lin Shu brimming with excitement, with no sign of finishing anytime soon, Ji Tingyang took out his phone to look over a document sent by his secretary during the spare moment. Before long, he heard a commotion nearby. "What's wrong with your staff? I already told you to reserve this dress for me. Why did you sell it to her?" A woman with short hair scolded the store. Employees in a fit of anger. The staff member wore a troubled expression. "Miss Xu, our staff already explained to you earlier that our store does not offer reservation services. Purchases can only be made on the spot." The woman with short hair knew the store's rules, so she had hurried over as soon as she heard the skirt had arrived, but to her dismay, someone else had gotten to it first. Thinking of how the skirt was a limited edition and the only one in the country, her anger surged. "I spend millions in your store every year. Is this how you treat your customers?" Without caring for more, the short-haired woman snatched the desired dress from the pile of clothes Lin Shu was waiting to check out and tossed it to the clerk. "Hurry up and process the payment for me." Lin Shu was stunned by the woman's audacity. The employee hesitated. Miss, was about to buy that. "Look at her, dressed all shabby. Everything on her is—" The short-haired woman scrutinized Lin Shu, her tone laced with disdain. 20-year-old outdated designs. Can she even afford it? Lin Shu didn't really care for the skirt. She would have been willing to let her have it if she had spoken politely. But the woman was utterly lacking manners. Lin Shu tugged at the corner of her mouth and pulled the skirt back towards her, pointing to the pile of clothes in front of her. "I'll take all of these, charge it to my card." She handed over her black card from her purse. The employee's face lit up with delight. Selling all these clothes would take care of her sales targets for the month. She eagerly reached out to take it. The short-haired woman froze for a moment. This bank card seemed all too familiar. As she thought this, she had already snatched the card to examine it closely. Credit cards usually bear the owner's name, and she immediately looked at the name, which was spelt in the Roman alphabet as Yi Ting Yang's. She remembered she had seen the card in Wen Li's hands before. "I was wondering how a pauper like you could afford these clothes. It turns out you've stolen someone else's credit card," he said with a touch. "Credit card fraud is illegal," the short-haired woman sneered contemptuously, glancing at the nearby employee. "What are you waiting for? Call the police, now." "What?" The employee, looking between the composed Lin Shu and the arrogant woman, was quite baffled for a moment. "Huh!" Lin Shu tucked her hair behind her ear, remaining serene. "This card is indeed mine." The short-haired woman seemed to hear a hilarious joke. The name on it clearly reads Ji Tingyang. "Lin Shu, that's right, Ji Tingyang gave it to me." "That card was obviously given to Wen Li by Ji Tingyang," the woman exclaimed, while pulling out her phone, ready to call the authorities. Seeing her causing trouble, Lin Shu's expression showed her annoyance, and just as she was about to retort, a voice from behind her preempted. "What's going on?" Di Zijian came up beside Lin Qing and noticed her frowning, seemingly in a bad mood, thinking she might have encountered some trouble. "Nothing. Just ran into someone causing a disturbance." Lin Shu snatched the bank card back from the short-haired woman and handed it to the clerk again. "Go ahead and check out." The clerk snapped out of it and nodded repeatedly. "Right away, I'll go get it." As she passed by the short-haired woman, the clerk glanced at her disdainfully. "What, stealing a bank card? That man was none other than President Ji himself. Utter nonsense. She almost lost such a big sale because of it." When Ji Tingyang appeared, the short-haired woman just froze in place until the clerk had left before she came back to her senses. She smoothed her hair and greeted him with a smile. "President Jie, so you are here." Lin Shu looked at Ji Tingyang and raised an eyebrow. "You know her?" If such an uncultured individual was a friend of her son, she would definitely have to educate him on the basic principles of making friends. Ji Tingyan just glanced at her and quickly looked away, saying coldly, "I don't know her." Lin Shu saved herself a lecture. The smile on the short-haired woman's face fell, and she hurriedly tried to salvage the situation. "President Ji, I am friends with Wen Li. We've met before at the club." At the mention of Wen Li, Ji Tingyang's movements froze for a moment, and he looked at her again. The short-haired woman felt a surge of joy, thinking he had remembered her, but before she could speak, Ji Tingyang simply uttered a faint, "Oh," and ignored her. The clerk was very efficient at checking out, and in no time, all the clothes were neatly packed. Dozens of bags arranged neatly on the table. Lin Shu tilted her chin, motioning for Ji Tingyang to take them, and walked out ahead of him. Ji Tingyang seemed experienced, giving the clerk the address to deliver everything to the villa, then strutted his long legs to catch up with Lin Shu. The club she just mentioned, it wouldn't happen to be a nightclub, would it? It's a leisure club opened by a friend. That's a relief. If you dare go to a nightclub and get into trouble, don't expect to come back home. I wouldn't go. Their casual conversation drifted away as they left, and it was only then that the short-haired woman came to her senses, quickly pulling out her phone to make a call. The phone was quickly answered, and a sweet voice said, "Hello?" Daisy turned. "Wen Li, I just saw Ji Tingyang at the mall, and guess what? He was actually shopping for clothes with another woman." "What's with him? Isn't he supposed to be head over heels for you? Isn't he supposed to do as you say?" "Another woman?" The first person Wen Li thought of was Luen Shu, and she felt a bit surprised. She knew Ji Tingyang was extremely busy with work every day, and yet this busy Ji Tingyang actually took time off work to go shopping with Luen Shu. While Wen Li was still in shock, the short-haired woman continued, "Didn't Ji Tingyang give you a black card before? How come it ended up in that woman's hands?" Wen Li subconsciously replied, "I gave it back to him. She didn't want to use Ji Tingyang's money." Then, the short-haired woman's voice exploded through the phone like fireworks. "You gave it back to him? Are you crazy? He's willing to spend money on you and you refuse it? Are you still hung up on that poor guy? Can't even afford a bouquet of flowers. What kind of life can he give you? A love without material aspects is like sand falling through fingers. Don't you understand that?" Chapter 7. It was you who provoked me first. After Lin Xiu finished buying clothes, she went on to look at shoes and handbags. Just as she was excited to move on to jewelry, Ji Tingyang immediately stopped her. "It's already noon. Aren't you hungry? Let's go have something to eat before we continue shopping. Otherwise, you'll run out of energy to walk later. Lin Shu hadn't felt it before, but hearing him say that made her feel hungry. All right, let's go have lunch then. Di Tingyang secretly breathed a sigh of relief. End quote. The driver had already been waiting at the entrance of the mall, and the two headed straight for the car. Suddenly, the giant electronic screen on the building across the mall switched displays. A handsome man with well-defined facial features appeared on the screen. He lifted the corners of his lips, showing a charming smile, and gently kissed the perfume bottle he was holding near his lips. In an instant, the women on the street stopped, completely mesmerized, wishing they were the ones being kissed. Ah, it's Jizaku. Husband, don't kiss it, kiss me. If I use this perfume, it's almost like my husband is kissing me, right? Ah, I need to buy it all. The screams ebbed and flowed among the crowd, all showcasing how popular Ji Zhiju was. Lin Shu stared at the screen, showing a face that resembled Ji Tingyang by 60 to 70%, and was stunned for a long moment. Is that Ziju? Ji Tingyang also saw the person on the screen. His expression was indifferent as he pursed his lips and responded, Yeah, Ziju is a big star now. That's impressive. While Lin Shu was unconscious, she had only seen bits and pieces of her three children's experiences and their ultimate outcomes in visions. She knew nothing else. In all these days, Ji Tingyang had never mentioned his younger brother and sister, so what she could know was even less. Nevertheless, Lin Shu hadn't expected that the baby her mother used to hold all day had become a household name star overnight. Excited, Lin Shu gazed at the electronic screen, trying to take a longer look at her younger son's handsome face. However, the ad on the screen was short-lived and quickly moved to another advertisement. During lunch, Lin Shu was continuously searching for information about Ji Zhu on her phone. The information recorded all the hard times he had been through, from his debut to his rise to fame, and the more she read, the tighter her brows furrowed. Lin Shu was upset that she hadn't been part of her children's growing up, so she read the information very seriously. She tried to imprint everything into her brain, and then deceitfully convinced herself that she had been part of their experiences. However, she was so focused on the information that she completely failed to notice the times Ji Tingyang's face showed a complex expression that he tried to speak but stopped himself. Lin Shu's gaze fell on the entertainment company where Zhi Chu was signed, and discovered it was Chenxing Entertainment. She suddenly lifted her head, looking at Zhi Tingyang with a mixture of shock and confusion. Zhenzing is our family group's competitor, right? In her memory, Chenxing had always been G Group's competitor. Had it been acquired by G's over the years? Yes. Zhu Tingyang's reply shattered her last illusion. Well, would Seichu be at Chenxing? Doesn't the Ji family have its own entertainment company? Lin Shu had always thought that Ji Ziqiu debuted under Ji family's entertainment subsidiary, so when others mentioned how difficult and challenging his rise to fame was before becoming well known, she felt both distressed and confused. Why would it be so difficult in his own family's company, especially when Ji Tingyang was supposedly looking out for him? It all became clear to her once she saw which company Ji Zq was affiliated with. Ji Tingyang, under the scrutinizing gaze of Lin Shu, eyes focused on the sharp point of a knife on the dining table, remained silent. Did you two have a fight? Having heard from Ji Tingyang previously that his younger son and daughter didn't often come home, she had already been suspicious. But now, Ji Tingyang's taciturn attitude further confirmed her suspicions. As Lin Shu contemplated the plot of the novel, a sudden suspicion arose in her heart. Could it be because of Wen Li? Wen Li? She remembered that the plot mentioned both antagonistic sons liking Wen Li, which caused a rift between the two brothers. The more Lin Shu thought about it, the more she felt she had uncovered the truth. Distracted by her thoughts, Lin Shu lost the mood to continue shopping in the afternoon and asked the driver to turn around back to the villa. This relieved Ji Tingyang, sparing him from the torturous shopping experience. He couldn't understand how his father had endured it in the past, able to shop with his mother all day without tiring. His tie hung loosely around his neck, adding a touch of careless charm. Ji Tingyang was about to head to the bedroom when his gaze fell upon the door at the end of the hall, and he changed direction. He pushed open the door, and Wen Li was on the phone with her back to him. "The weather has cooled down. Remember to wear more clothes." "Yes, I'm fine here. Let's go on a date tomorrow. It doesn't matter where we go, as long as I'm with you." Her shy smile reflected on the window pane, stinging Ji Tingyang's eyes. He walked over and snatched the phone from Wen Li's hand. The screen brightly displayed the name Xiao Yu. He straightened and faced the audience, gathering his wits, and rang out his latest experiment. Wen Li turned pale and reached to snatch the phone back. Ji Tingyang was quicker, hung up the call, and furiously threw the phone to the ground. He grasped her chin tightly and said harshly, "Wen Li, I allowed you to go out, not to set dates with Xiao Yu." Wen Li's eyes instantly welled up with tears, and she choked out, "You have someone new now. Why can't you let me go?" "Newcomer?" Ji Tingyang hadn't yet realized who she was referring to when he heard Wen Li continue. "Isn't Lin Shu already with you? You're giving her your card, buying her clothes. Why can't you just let me go?" Ji Tingyang hesitated, wanting to say that Ling Su was only his mother, but given Ling Su's youthful appearance now, that statement was hard to believe. All he could muster was a dry denial. She isn't. Not what you think." Tears finally slid down Wen Li's cheeks, dropping onto the back of his hand. She said vulnerably, "I beg you to let me leave. There's no chance for us." Ji Tingyang felt as though her tears scalded him, and he released his grip on her chin. He stood there before murmuring a denial. "Wen Li, it was you who approached me first." At that time he was despondent due to his parents' deaths, and all the relatives in the Ji family were seizing the opportunity to plunder what his father had built. Throughout that time he was listless, and Wen Li was the first person to approach him, voluntarily. If I could turn back time, I definitely would not choose to approach you, said Wen Li coldly, tears in her eyes. Upon hearing her words, Ji Tingyang's face paled as he stared intently at Wen Li. After a long moment, he turned and left. Before he left, he dropped a ruthless remark. "I will tell the butler that you are to rest at home tomorrow.